Bonjour à tous, la vidéo Le bouclier magnétique de la Terre est fortement endommagé vous est présentée par Ben Garneau. Alors sur cette image, mise en ligne par BP Earthwatch il y a quelques jours seulement, on voit que le bouclier magnétique de la Terre est complètement endommagé, en ce sens que la couleur violette qui entoure la Terre n'est même pas disponible dans le petit carré qu'on voit en bas à droite. Donc ce qu'on voit là, ça n'a jamais été vu précédemment. Vous pouvez voir la vidéo, je l'ai mis dans la description qui accompagne la vidéo. J'ai mis le lien. Je vous présente maintenant une vidéo tout aussi récente mise en ligne par Suspicious Observers.
This is the large earthquake outlook for the remainder of the year, with some notable patterns repeating from the past. First, let me pull up the largest earthquakes for the last 30 days, in order of strength. Remember, Earth should see 3 magnitude 6 per week on the long-term average, and we've only had 1 in the last month. We haven't seen a magnitude 7 earthquake since February, and those are expected about once every 20 days. What this amounts to is the beginning of an earthquake drought similar to the one we saw just last year. 3.5 months have gone by without a magnitude 7, and we expected about 11 more magnitude 6 earthquakes than we got in the last month. Back in 2017, we went nearly 6 months without a magnitude 7 event, the longest such stretch on record, and for almost 3 straight months we were notably below average in the magnitude 6 range. You will recall, last year ended with an amazing flurry of magnitude 7 earthquakes and the 8.2 in Mexico. Now let's take a moment to recall the solar polar magnetic fields. Up top is the total solar polar magnetism to which Earth is exposed, and below it, it is broken down into blue North Pole, red South Pole, with the yellow average traced between them. In 2015, along with co-authors Dr. Holloman from Ohio State and Dr. Uyen from NASA, the spikes in force and reversals of polarity were seen to occur around the time of the largest earthquakes. So, for example, here is what happened from 2010 to 2014. Every magnitude 8 in that stretch is on here, and they hit 4 straight positive peaks of the red southern fields, and then on the right, a reversal of polarity of the solar fields. That is what the study identified for almost the entire period. 80% of all magnitude 8 earthquakes on record have struck within days of one of these events that only happen a few times a year. In other words, you can look at the spikes and reversals of the solar polar fields and pick out about the 20 or 30% of days closest to them, and yet you'll get 3 to 4 times the expected number of magnitude 8 earthquakes hitting those times versus what you would expect by random, meaning they're not randomly distributed. Now let's just look at 2016 through now. We are coming out of solar maximum polarity reversals and into more proper yearly oscillations in exposed strength. Last year, the earthquake drought ended as the northern fields exited their trough and rose towards their positive peak, with the Mexico 8.2 right at the apex. To the right of that apex, the maximum curve, you see the dip back down of the blue line, and we're back into another earthquake drought in 2018, as we mentioned at the beginning. We do have northern fields expected to go even higher this year, so a ways to go on the rise, but that peak of magnetism is upcoming in the later months of the year, likely a double peak around September and October, with a polarity reversal in yellow coming up in late July or August. We're going to be paying close attention over the coming weeks. Now, while sunspots are expected to remain largely absent the remainder of the year, there is potential for one of those upticks like we had in September 2017, and if that occurs again this year from August to early October, and the polar fields are either in the process of reversing or peaking in strength, the Earth should be considered at excess risk for another magnitude 8 event. Notable that the magnitude 7 events would have likely returned in the weeks beforehand. So that is an expected extension of the current low activity period. The drought is probably going to last a bit longer. A return of the magnitude 7 events should be coming in the weeks ahead, and then pay close attention to the solar polar fields and the sunspots. Runs of obvious patterning like this are peppered throughout the entire data record, only a few misses sprinkled in here and there. The goal today has been to deliver the background and to set the stage to see if another one of those patterns is emerging now, and to hopefully be able to forecast the period of next great seismic activity.
Maintenant, je vais vous proposer une autre vidéo, La physicienne et le philosophe, vidéo très récente. Ça dure 1h20, mais je vous présente seulement que les meilleurs extraits. Alors, au début, il nous parle de l'éruption volcanique de Hawaï et de la fameuse fissure numéro 8.
So getting back to this gentleman, every day he walks to, and he's literally a quarter of a mile, I believe, from Fissure number 8. Big Daddy is what they call it. Claudia, I have just never, and I don't think apparently many of the residents there either have, the amount of magma being pushed out of that fissure. And of course, now it's known that the crater, the lava lake, has collapsed. It is now blocked. There was a 5.5 up there yesterday. I think what we're seeing, Claudia, is with fissure number 8, that's the pressure that is building on the main part of the volcano of Maalaea. And then we saw Guatemala, and look how many people died from that.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, Hawaii has become a very dangerous place because this kind of volcanic eruption we are seeing, to me, is a very bad sign. We've had the earth fracturing for years. We've had the ocean recession events. And now we're starting with, because these volcanic eruptions are going to be endless. They're not going to end, because as the earth opens up more and more and more, you're just going to get more and more magma oozing out of every hole. And it's just not going to end. So when it starts at a certain place, it may never stop again.
So when we think about the Earth's crust, we have the mantle, which is what? It's not that deep. I mean, what, 25, 50, 100 miles?
Sure. I can't remember right now. Plus, the last time I looked at it was in kilometers.
Okay.
But I know the crust is about 62 miles deep.
Okay.
And then the mantle will be at least 10 times that.
And that's where the magma is at.
The magma is underneath. Well, part of the mantle, the bottom part of the mantle is also liquid. And then the outer core is completely liquid. And then you have the inner core that's solid.
Okay.
So it's the outer core that's liquid. It's just magma. And it's under pressure because it has all the layers on top of it. So the moment it finds a way up, it will go to the surface. It's just being pushed because it's under pressure. So yeah, within the fractures, it just finds its way to the surface.
And what did I read? I think it was, I'm trying to think if it was in the New York Times or not, but they have now found a fault line that runs underneath New York City. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's a different type of strata. That is much more granite, and those type of quakes would be felt, I think, much more violently than a quake, particularly on the West Coast.
Most likely, but it depends on how deep the earthquake will be.
Right.
Because apparently shallow, close to the surface earthquakes are usually felt much more. And yeah, the granite, in granite regions, usually you don't get as many earthquakes.
Correct.
Because usually, first of all, you don't get as many fractures because the ground is so much harder. So it doesn't fracture as easily. But the fact that they're finding new fractures all over the place,
Yeah, that's just it.
Indicates that they're just occurring now. They knew.
Yeah. I used to live in St. Louis and was actually born in Belleville, Illinois. And so everyone is very, very much aware of the what is it?
The San Andreas?
No, I just had it right there. Maybe someone in the room will catch that. I had it right on the tip of my tongue. You know how that happens, you know?
Yes.
And I can actually, I'm trying to do the recall. What is the fault, folks, along the Mississippi River? The New Madrid.
Oh, New Madrid. Oh, yes.
The New Madrid, and the stories of the last big one, which I think was right after the Civil War, where the Mississippi River was flowing backwards.
Oh, yes.
And the riverboat captains were saying that the trees, and these are popular, these are hickory, they were literally, Claudia, being shot up into the air.
Wow.
So when I think about what our country has gone through here in the United States and North America, we've been lullified into thinking that, well, you know, things are just always going to be this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the ground there is not as hard. It's not granite. I think it's more like a clay kind of soil.
It's Mississippi mud.
And then what you do is you get liquefaction.
Yes.
And what happens is it just absorbs objects. It's like quicksand.
And they do have quicksand along the Mississippi. I know. I have fallen into it, folks.
Oh, my.
It's not a fun feeling because that sucker will suck you down.
Yeah. So you can imagine during a large earthquake, the ground everywhere becomes like that. And it can absorb objects, cars, buildings. They just go straight down into the ground.
Je vais vous présenter un dernier extrait de cette vidéo. Vous allez voir, ça devient de plus en plus intéressant.
When I was living in Austin, Claudia, there was only 3 temperature ranges: hot, hotter, and get the hell out. You know? I mean, that's about how warm it would get. I remember one Labor Day, and it got up to like 109 degrees, and I said, you know what? This sucks. I don't care where this job is. I want out of this. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think about the deaths that we're hearing about in India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan of these intense heat waves. I understand now they're moving into China. And when we begin to see the press who has suppressed this, I mean, when you're getting to temperatures of nearly 126 degrees Fahrenheit, what would that be in Celsius? What would that be? What, 94? 95 Celsius?
No, it's about 40 Celsius.
40 Celsius, okay.
Yeah, it's about 40, I think.
Yeah, so that's...
Or more, between 40 and 50. I think that's the temperatures they're getting in India, 40 or 50. But don't forget that, say in the 1980s, it was thought that it was impossible to get a temperature of 50 anywhere on Earth.
Yes, okay.
So these are abnormally high, but this is only because the heat is coming out from the interior of the Earth.
I was going to ask, so where is this? Because it seems to be concentrated. It seems to be, and Claudia, I don't know. I haven't seen any studies, but I bet you if we were able to get the data, I bet you it's spherical in its influence, as opposed to an erratic type of border. So where is it coming from?
You see, the Earth itself is generating more heat, the core, because as the stellar cores draw energy, and heat is energy, the Earth just generates more heat.
Okay.
So the heat is flowing out from the core through all Earth's layers outwards, and then it's being radiated. It's energy and therefore light. Heat and energy is all light, is being radiated by the surface of the Earth out to the atmosphere.
Claudia, could we be seeing the effects of plasma as well in these isolated incidences that somehow or another?
We are basically, everything is electrical to one degree or another. So even though the Earth's atmosphere is mainly neutral, you still get plasma, at least when you have lightning, because there is an electric potential difference between the surface of the Earth and the outer layer, the ionosphere. And so you're going to get atoms being ionized because of this potential difference. So, and inside the Earth, we have the same thing, because the core, this potential difference actually between the core and the outer layer. So you get ion, and then you have all this heat in the inner core, which helps it. So there's ionization everywhere. And earthquakes are actually electrical in nature.
Yes.
And that tells you as well, because the ionosphere can affect the inner planet by inducing currents inside. And these electrical fields and these electrical currents will lead to earthquakes occurring. So all phenomena, all mechanisms that are occurring in the universe are due to electrical interactions. Or we can think of them as gravitational, but it's actually the electrical that gives rise to the gravitational interaction. You do not get one without the other.
I was going to say there would have to be an electromagnetic field involved.
Yes.
Yeah. Now I'm beginning to understand more and more about what Tesla was looking at. What you're describing, you're teaching me, but that allows me now to begin to comprehend much more when we begin to think about the core of the Earth having a greater influence than what we ever thought on the surface, because we always think that it's coming from the atmosphere down.
Well,
you're a smart lady. I don't know if anyone ever told you that before.
Thank you. Some things are coming from outside, but most of the energy powering the Earth's mechanisms is coming from the Earth's core itself.
Yeah. Yeah. This is radical. It's a radical new approach that begins for a layman as myself, and this is why I enjoy our shows, that it adds to my knowledge, and that is where we begin to increase in wisdom.
Alors voilà pour les extraits de vidéo. Qu'est-ce qu'il faut retenir de tout ça? C'est que l'univers est électrique. Comme le mentionnent Suspicious Observers, les tremblements de terre correspondent au pic d'activité solaire, tandis qu'au niveau du noyau terrestre, il y a quelque chose, évidemment, qui est électrique et qui tire la chaleur hors de la Terre par les fissures. Et en plus, la lave est plus chaude qu'avant. Alors pendant qu'on regarde au moins une autre vidéo, à quel point la météo est devenue capricieuse. Incroyable de voir des trombes d'eau comme ça. Et en plus, il y a du nouveau sur la planète Mars. Donc, en date du 13 juin 2018, la plus grosse tempête de sable sur Mars depuis 2004. Et aussi, il y aurait des traces de méthane sur Mars, des traces de méthane qu'on dit de source organique. Alors voilà, c'est tout pour cette vidéo. Alors qu'on se quitte sur ces images-là, est-ce que Suspicious Observers a raison? Est-ce qu'on va observer une augmentation des tremblements de terre pour la deuxième partie de 2018? C'est ce qu'on verra. Mais le but de cette vidéo, c'est de démontrer que l'activité électromagnétique détermine la quantité de tremblements de terre, de volcans et aussi beaucoup le climat sur la Terre. Il y a quelques années, j'ai écrit un article sur mon blog Nibiru et les 3 causes des changements climatiques. Alors dans cet article-là, on retrouve exactement ce qui se passe aujourd'hui, le champ électromagnétique du système solaire qui est complètement défait, l'augmentation des volcans, les tremblements de terre, la météo qui devient complètement imprévisible. Alors si l'article vous intéresse, j'ai mis le lien dans la description. Alors c'est tout pour aujourd'hui, ici Ben Garneau, je vous remercie de m'avoir écouté et je vous dis à la prochaine.